month of Purushottam, and we pray for the mercy of the Acharyas that we will please the Lord with our discussions today and get the extra mercy that is available in this month for our services to please the Lord. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanami Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prachari Nirvishesha Punyavadi Vasatyadeshatarine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prachari Vishesha Punyavadi Vasatyadeshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Hari Bo Hari Bo Hari Bo Nitya Gaura Hari Bo Nitya Gaura Hari Bo Hari Bo Hari Bo Nitya Gaura Hari Bo Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Shri Gaura Hare Ki Purushottam Nas Ki Srila Prabhupada Ki Again, thank you all so much for joining us this evening. We're going to continue with our discussions on chapter 23 of the teachings of Lord Caitanya. We are discussing the second part of this chapter. So we'll begin with our prayers to our spiritual masters for the mercy and the blessings. Om Gyanatmirandasya Ginanginashalakaya Chakshurunmidam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Tapatam Yena Bhutale Swayam Dati Swapadantikam Om Vishnupadaya Krishnaprestaya Bhutale Namaste Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pasharine Nirvishesha Nivari Paschati Deshtarine. I also pray for all your blessings to justice to this class so that we can get a better understanding of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes and his teachings so we can serve him better. So the teachings of Lord Chaitanya is based on Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's biography called Chaitanya Charitamrita. The biography was written by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. So in these pastimes, the Lord has met with Prakashananda Saraswati and his disciples. They were great Mayavadi philosophers at the time of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance 500 years ago. At the time, the city that they met in was called Benares. Now it is modern day Varanasi. The Lord was able to expertly explain the essence of spiritual life, right, contained in the teachings of the Vedanta Sutra, which these sannyasis had understood from a Mayavad perspective. So having gotten the taste of hearing Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's wonderful expositions, when Prakashananda Saraswati met the Lord again in Varanasi sometime later, he asked the Lord to further explain Srimad Bhagavatam, and of course Srimad Bhagavatam based on the Vedanta Sutra, the way it should be understood. So we are continuing from this point onwards about that discussion, and we had actually spoken last week about the importance of knowledge becoming realized. So that knowledge is available, is very clear, particularly in what we know as Sanatana Dharma. Sometimes, of course, referred to as Hinduism, but Sanatana Dharma, of course, being very deep and very scientific, as Sri Prabhupada explains, is based on realized knowledge, scientific knowledge. So what does that mean? All the vast Vedic scriptures and all the knowledge that they contain, including all their supplementary bodies of literature like the Puranas and the histories called Itihas, as well as even the social sciences which are meant to help society develop towards spiritual life. All of this knowledge is important to know theoretically, but the knowledge must also be realized, or what Sri Prabhupada calls scientific. So what does that mean? It means that the knowledge must be able to be applied practically in our lives, and there must be some practical example or some practical evidence that the knowledge has transformed us. This is the important thing. So Vedic knowledge is not just simply theoretical, right? It must be realized. It must actually make a difference to us, because it's supposed to, the difference it's supposed to make is that it's supposed to clear away our material contamination. That's the point of Vedic knowledge. Sometimes we make the mistake of thinking that since we get material things as a byproduct from Vedic knowledge, right? People get wealth, they may get some status in society. They think that these byproducts are what the Vedic teachings are there for. And this is what Krishna calls the flowery words of the Vedas. If we get distracted by that, we miss the point. But we also said last week that the Vedic knowledge is so powerful that surely it must have a more spiritual, transcendental purpose. And transcendental purpose, this is the important thing. This is how we can get elevated to that transcendental level so we can get free of this world. Vedic knowledge is not meant to help us stay in this world. And that's the very important thing. Why would we want to stay in this world? And it's very clearly known to all of us that there's misery every day, everywhere we look. No one is at peace. Everyone is suffering from birth, disease, old age, and death, what to speak of everything else in between. Right? The other miseries, Adidevik, Adibhotik, Adhyasmik. Our own mind, body is causing us miseries. Other people are causing us miseries. nature is causing us miseries through disasters and bad weather and so on. And it never ends. We don't want to stay here. The Vedic teachings are not telling us to stay here. Okay? So how do we realize that knowledge? How do we then transform that knowledge from just the theoretical understanding to a practical application in our lives? We went through this last week as well. It is by faithfully surrendering and serving the spiritual master. Okay, this is very important. The spiritual master is actually the outer manifestation of the super soul within, right? And the super soul is, of course, the witness to all our activities, and he's our personal guide to get out of this material world. He's just waiting for us to turn to him to get that knowledge realized. He gives that understanding. How do we know this? Krishna promises in Bhagavad Gita, right? Chapter 10, text 10, one of the most foundational verses in spiritual life. Krishna says he gives the knowledge from within, okay? And his outer manifestation, the spiritual master, is making that perhaps more clearer to us. We don't understand that that voice yet. We're not on the level yet. We hear the Lord from within. We get the instructions from the spiritual master, right? And through applying those instructions, that knowledge, the theoretical knowledge becomes more and more practical, more and more understandable. And then we can see how the knowledge transforms us in life. This is the point. But we have to approach the spiritual master, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, through submission and service, right? Submissive inquiries and rendering service faithfully. This is very important. The spiritual master is the representative of the super soul, and we have to respect him as much, but we also have to inquire also, because what is known within us will become more clearer when we inquire from the spiritual master, and that we can also have our doubts satisfied. This is also essential. Krishna says that for the doubting soul, there is neither happiness in this world nor the next. So all our doubts must be satisfied as well in spiritual life, so that we can make progress. So the point of having this knowledge realized by us means that the most foundational aspects of spiritual life will also be realized. And what is that foundational knowledge? As Krishna gives it to us in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, it is knowing that we are the soul. So we said last week, it's not enough to just know that we're the soul. This much we have read when we read Bhagavad Gita, and we've been instructed also by our spiritual masters. But have we realized it? Are we living practically from the level of the soul? That is obviously not possible for us just yet. We're still living from the perspective of the material body. We're still acting from the identities of who we are in terms of this material body, which means we're actually which means that we're still acting from the false ego. This is it. We have a name, we have an identity, we have a place that we're born. We're acting from all of that. We're not yet acting from the level of the soul. When we get to that level of acting from the soul, that is actually the beginning of spiritual life. That's the real beginning of spiritual life. This is what is called sambandha. Okay, we've discussed this term before, but we keep emphasizing it because this is actually what the Vedanta Sutra is about. And the Vedanta Sutra is actually describing sambandha, abhideya, and prayojan. Okay? Sambandha is when knowledge becomes realized, when it's actually been translated into life, and we think, or we understand that, look, I'm not this body, I'm actually the soul. Okay. Of course, this is just also the beginning, because we don't actually have our identity as the soul then developed, and we don't really know how to act exactly, right? It's like waking up from a whole other existence, right? Thinking with this material body, being in the control of the false ego, to suddenly just waking up and being something else. So we have to actually then grow into our soul's relationship with Krishna. That's the second stage, abhideya. Okay, now we're performing real devotional service from the platform of the soul. And once we perfect that level, abhideya, we get to prayojan, which is love for Krishna. So we see that right now we're not actually at the level of sambandha. We only have theoretical knowledge. It's not yet realized. We haven't started real devotion. Basically, Prabhupada says it, we're on the material level. We're rendering services to Krishna on the material platform, and we're sort of material devotees. He calls us Prakrita Bhaktas, right? So we also said last week that the stage is important. It's important because Srila Prabhupada says that if we are sincerely executing devotional service at this stage, we're actually considered liberated. because that sincerity is so essential that if we can maintain that, the Lord from within is going to help us to get to progress more and more on this path. He's aware of everything, every single thought. It's so essential to be sincere that we can almost consider it a language by which we can communicate with him, even if we're not aware of it just yet. So that sincerity is so important that even if we're not perfect, we're not the best at performing a service or anything, but if we're sincere, right, the progress is so guaranteed by the Lord's help that Sri Prabhupada says we could already be considered liberated, even if we're not yet at the level of Sambandha either. So this is very important. So in that comes that that gravity, that knowing that right now we're performing devotional service practically in the mode, we're still under the influence of false ego, that we have to be very circumspect when we are performing that devotional service. We have to understand that it's still subject to our flaws, right? We're still very much affected by the false ego. So we may still be pushing our agendas through our devotional service, and this is dangerous because it means that we can offend others, right? Thinking that, if we're performing devotional service, then everyone should just assist us or do what they can to push our ideas or our will forward and so on. And we can see how that may be dangerous because we're not on that level of Sambandha yet. We're not yet being directly guided by the super soul, that we know what the super soul wants us to do. A lot of the times, we're actually performing our services from our false ego. So our idea of what we're doing may not be correct. It's not absolute, basically. Right? It's still subject to the relative nature of this world. So we have to be careful then that we don't cause offenses in pushing forward our agendas. Very important. We always have to be circumspect until we can get to the level of actually understanding what the super soul wants us to do. And then when we execute it, it will always be good and right and correct. Right? We will be directly guided by the Lord to do that. So that level of Sambandha, it's a very high level to reach. Right? Maybe we may feel we're at that level, but we need to see what the criteria are. Krishna always gives us the criteria. 1854 in Bhagavad Gita, he says, Brahma bhutaha prasannatma na shochati na kangshati samaha sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim lakate param. The translation is, one who is thus transcendently situated at once realizes the Supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. And we have to be fully joyful. He never laments or desires to have anything. So no lamenting, no desiring. He is equally disposed towards every living entity. In that state, he attains pure devotional service to me. It's a tall order for us to see, right? Pretty much all of us are not on that level, at least. Okay, no bad moods, no getting frustrated, angry, irritated, fully joyful, right? No lamenting, no desiring for anything, seeing everyone equally. And we also remember, I think it's a quote from Chanakya Pandit, seeing others' possessions as rubbish, seeing stone the same as gold, seeing everyone's mother every woman as one's mother, and of course conversely every man as one's father, I suppose, but at least not having any kind of other motivations towards them. So this is a very, very high level. This is what we need to be aiming for, but we have to understand when we're not on that level, and we have to consequently be humble enough to execute our devotional service as we are, and understand that we may not always be right and may not always be correct, but we're trying. And we should just always be praying to the Lord to help us do what is correct, not assuming that we know what is correct. Right? It's very important. We have to be circumspect. And we have to constantly also be careful to not make offenses and to apologize. Right? To be quick to apologize if we think we have. And know that this is how we can actually make progress. Therefore, humility is so essential in this path of making spiritual progress for Krishna. So then we may ask, well, okay, so we have all this theoretical knowledge and we are getting instructions from the spiritual master. So how is it that we're not yet making or not so carefully, we're not yet at the level of Sambandha? Right? So it's this point of offenses that we keep bringing up. We have to be free of offenses. We also have to be fully free of material contamination, and this is a little bit of a tall order. for us just yet, particularly because we're very much involved in material life at so many levels. The detachment from material life and being free from offenses are very essential in order to help us get to the level of sambandha, right? So this is actually explained by Srila Prabhupada, in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, this is Canto 3, Chapter 15, Text 25. Yasha Vrajanti Animisham Rishabha Nivritya Dure Yamahi Uparinaha Prihaniya Shilaha Bhardur Mitah Yasha Katana Nuragha Vaiklavya Bhashka Kalaya Pulaki Vitangaha. Persons whose bodily features change in ecstasy and who breathe heavily and perspire due to hearing the glories of the Lord are promoted to the kingdom of God, even though they do not care for meditation and other austerities. The kingdom of God is above the material universes, and it is desired by Brahma and other demigods. So Sri Prabhupada says in the purport to this verse that to get to this point where we're experiencing these ecstatic symptoms, and that means that we're basically promoted to the kingdom of God even while we're in this world, we have to get the good qualities of a devotee. And for that to happen, we have to be free of material contamination. And right now we're expressing material qualities. Those 26 qualities are listed in the Caitanya Charitamrita. We can provide a list, of course, in our group today. We just don't have time to get into all of them right now. But those 26 qualities are essential. And Sri Prabhupada also says in this purport that those are actually qualities of the Lord. Right? We possess them in minute quantities. The Lord, of course, possesses them unlimitedly. But when we engage in the service of the Lord, we can develop them to the maximum that a living entity can develop. So this is essential because we can only enter into the spiritual world when we are of the same quality of the spiritual world. And of course, the spiritual world is of the same quality of the Lord. Right? It's the same way that we can't enter into water unless we are, in terms of our physical bodies, able to exist in water. So in a completely spiritual atmosphere, we have to be of the same quality. And that's essential. And the next thing Sri Prabhupada says in this purport is we have to be free of offenses. Right? He states the 10 offenses to the holy name. We will also list that in our class, but in our group. But all of those offenses are also essential to avoid. So if we are developing those qualities, right? If we are free from offenses, then suddenly when we chant the holy name, then we'll experience all these ecstatic symptoms, and we'll be able to enter into the spiritual world. So of course, that entrance into the spiritual world is prayojan. That's the end result. But to get there, we start at sambandha, and at least we must be developing our good qualities and becoming free of material contamination before that. And avoiding the offenses is so essential to even starting the process. So this is what we have to work on. This is why we may not be feeling yet that we're making any progress. It's that we are suffering the results of the offenses first before we're actually feeling the positive results of our activity. His Holiness Swami Maharaj explained that very nicely. So if we're only feeling the results of our offenses, this is why spiritual life actually seems so difficult, and it seems that we're not moving forward towards Sambandha, at least according to all the qualities that Krishna has listed in the Bhagavad Gita. And this is quite essential. So we need to be aware of where we're at, and we need to be aware of what we need to do to change that. Okay, so offenses are very important to avoid. Getting free of material contamination, developing good qualities through association. We said through association with good devotees, and also hearing very attentively to our chanting, to our japa. These are all practical things that we can do to do what is necessary to come to the level of sambandha at least. Okay. So the help is always coming and go. We have to be aware the help is always there. The super soul is always helping us. Remember, we all have our own super soul. He's with us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days and a quarter every year. And every single minute he wants to help us. The spiritual master is his external manifestation. And all other devotees who are sincerely preaching this message are there to help us. Okay, it may seem like it's difficult, but the help is there. They want us to achieve that goal of prayojan. So we don't have to be motivated. We just have to be aware. The important thing is to be aware. Right? The help will come. Okay. Then Srimad Bhagavatam actually explains when we get to that level of prayojan, what is the symptoms? What will we feel then? Okay. That is actually verse 3 of the Chaturshloki Srimad Bhagavatam. So we said that Srimad Bhagavatam actually has 4 verses at its core. And the third verse actually tells us what that goal is like, what we are actually aiming for, right? Amanda Abhidaya, what will prayojan be like? So let's read that verse. Yata mahanti bhutani bhuteshu cha vacheshva anu pravishtani apravishtani tata teshu na teshva aham. O Brahma, please know that the universal elements enter into the cosmos and at the same time do not enter into the cosmos. Similarly, I myself also exist within everything created, and at the same time, I am outside of everything. So read our text in order to explain a bit more on that. Pure devotees know very well that they are meant to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that all things that exist constitute the means by which they can serve the Lord. So how does this all tie in together? Well, we may still be in the material world right now, and we may ask ourselves, we may still be here when we reach the level of prayojan. So how will we actually know that anything has changed? So the difference is that at that point, we will see everything in this world as Krishna. And this is the ultimate understanding of what oneness is. Krishna is saying here that he exists within everything created here, as well as outside, of course, in the spiritual world. The pure devotee sees everything as the Lord. We gave another example last week that everything is Krishna's energy, the same way electricity is, well, just electricity to an engineer who's using it for different purposes. But for us, the user, that electricity can be turned into heating, it can be turned into cooling. The actual energy doesn't change, it's just how we are perceiving it, what it's being used for. So this material world can also be considered spiritual if it's being used in Krishna service. So for the Lord, it's all the same. We are seeing it as material because our purpose is for us, for the false ego. So right now, when we Pratyeta Bhaktas, we're in the practice of trying to use everything for Krishna's service, right? Though there's still that trace of false ego, so we don't actually perceive it fully as being for him. For example, we're trying to utilize ingredients in cooking for Krishna, but we know that our taste is involved, right? We have to be honest. So we're preparing the dish because we have to eat, right? We're kind of just offering it to Krishna along the way, and that's the truth. But someone who becomes a pure devotee is able to see that energy as Krishna's, and he's slowly preparing that meal for Krishna with absolutely no material motivation, no personal motivation whatsoever. The false ego, it doesn't exist anymore. So every single thing is Krishna and for Krishna, and that transcendental vision is what we're aiming for. When we have that, then there's actually no separation from Krishna, and that of course means that this person can still be in the material world, but for them it's the spiritual world. There actually isn't any difference between the two. So this is a very powerful state for us to be at. Therefore, because a pure devotee has been blessed by the Supreme Lord from within the core of his heart, wherever he looks, he sees the Lord and nothing more. So this is what we're aiming for. So the truth is that the real illusion right now is trying to use everything for us. Otherwise, this world is real. It's real and it's meant for service. And the Mayavadis are different. They think that this world is false, that it's actually just, the illusion is that we think it's real, as if it's all a figment of our imagination, this computer, this laptop, our bodies, all of that. But that's not true. Krishna is stating here that it's all him. So how can it be false? Right? Of course, Mayavadis think that Krishna is false. That's their fundamental problem. But it's as real as it can be. And its true nature will be understood by us when we're utilizing it all for Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 2, Text 55, confirms this relationship between the pure devotee and the Supreme Lord as follows. If a person's heart is always tied to the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord with a rope of love, the Lord does not leave him. Indeed, even if his remembrance is not perfect, he is to be considered a first-class devotee. So back to that wonderful point, that if we are sincere, even if there are some flaws in our services, not yet at Sambandha, we're still struggling a little bit with the false ego. But if our heart is always tied to the lotus feet of the Lord of the rope of love, we're sincerely trying to cultivate the love, the Lord doesn't leave us. Right? Even though we may not be at the level of the pure devotees, seeing the Lord everywhere, we may not be aware that He's everywhere, but He's still with us. Right? He's actually with us. And therefore, it's a very nice and strong statement. He's still to be considered a first-class devotee. So progress is not impossible. We must not be demotivated at still being on a material level. The importance is that we're putting in the sincerity in everything that we're doing. An example of this is described in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 36, 4. When the gopis assembled for their rasa dance with Krishna, Krishna apparently left them. Consequently, they began to chant the holy name of Krishna, and being overwhelmed with madness, inquired about Krishna from the flowers and creepers in the forest. Krishna is like the sky. He is situated everywhere. So the Lord will always be with us, right? He is everywhere. The gopis, of course, are so, like, their level is unbelievable. We can't imagine it. But they're actually demonstrating to us what is real that we just can't tell right now. That Krishna is actually everywhere. Even when he appeared to disappear from their visions, he was still there with them, and he's still with us. The important thing is that we're cultivating that relationship with him all the time in sincerity. And even if, of course, at the most essential times, we can't exactly remember him for whatever reason, maybe we're beset by fear, maybe it's a time of death and we're unconscious and so on, the Lord will remember us. This much is certain. Krishna actually, Srila Prabhupada actually states in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the third canto, in relation to how Krishna saved his teacher's son from death, he says that Krishna is not an ingrate. A devotee who's been trying sincerely to serve him, the Lord is going to help him, right? He really just wants to see that sincerity. It's like the harbinger of love. Love may not be fully developed yet, but if that sincerity is here, it just melts the Lord, right? He will always reciprocate. So this much we have to also be confident of, right? Utsahan, Nishya, Dhairya. We have to be confident of that. We have to be enthusiastic to keep going, and we have to be patient, right, to get to those stages eventually, because the Lord's mercy is with us that we'll be able to do so. And we remember that famous verse that we quoted last week on the third canto as well, where Uddhava is saying that where will we find a more merciful master than the Lord? He accepted service from Putana, right? And he gave us such an exalted destination. So if a devotee is sincerely trying to please the Lord, how much more the Lord will do for them. Lord Brahma also prays in the 14th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam. We've been reading these verses in this month of Purushottam. I'm not sure if I mentioned this last week, but it's a beautiful verse. So let's read it again. My mind becomes bewildered just trying to think of what reward other than you could be found anywhere. You are the embodiment of all benedictions which you bestow upon these residents of the cowherd community of Vrindavan. You have already arranged to give yourself to Putana and her family members, in exchange for her disguising herself as a devotee. So just by the disguise of a devotee, the Lord has given himself to Putana and her family. So what is left for you to give these devotees of Vrindavan, whose homes, wealth, friends, dear relations, bodies, children, and very lives and hearts are all dedicated to you? So even for her insincere service, indirect service, Putana was blessed so much, right? If we're trying sincerely, how much more the Lord will bless us, right? The important thing is the sincerity, right? We keep emphasizing this. Okay. This is why Srila Prabhupada says that sincerity means that devotee is actually considered to be liberated. Okay. Lord Krishna is not an ingrate, but more importantly, he's also our father, right? Ham Bija, Prada Pita. The father never forsakes his children, even if their service is not exactly perfect, but again, we said the sincerity is there. He sees our struggle, and like any loving family would, when someone is struggling, even if they're not in their best condition, right, they'll be there for that family, and then Krishna's the best family. Therefore, by studying Srimad Bhagavatam, we can learn about our eternal relationship with the Lord, understand the procedure for regaining Him, and attain the ultimate realization, which is love of Godhead. So, Srimad Bhagavatam is there. Sri Prabhupada Somasati made it available for us. The devotees are there to explain the Srimad Bhagavatam, to explain how we can develop this relationship. And the Lord is there to help us so much more than we can imagine. And it's not a cliche, that line that if we take one step towards Him, He takes 10 steps towards us. For every bit of effort we put in, He's putting even more of an effort than we can even imagine. Right? Whatever we are doing for Him, progress is guaranteed. Right? He is making, He's meeting us more than halfway in order to make sure that that is possible. So we remember these two verses from Sri Ishopanishad, verses 17 and 18. We'll read the translation. Let this temporary body be burnt to ashes, and let the air of life be merged with the totality of air. Now, O my Lord, please remember all my sacrifices, and because you are the ultimate beneficiary, please remember all that I have done for you. O my Lord, as powerful as fire, O omnipotent one, now I offer you all obeisances, falling on the ground at your feet. O my Lord, please lead me on the right path to reach you, and since you know all that I have done in the past, please free me from the reactions to my past sins so that there will be no hindrance to my progress. Okay. These are very beautiful verses from the Upanishad. This is very acknowledged, right? The Upanishads, of course, corollaries to the Vedas. So these are authorized prayers that are appealing to the Lord, that He will remove obstacles to our progress to Him, that He will remember what we have done for Him, and so on. So He's always making that effort for us. Right? This much is very clear, right? Even in the Vedas it is stated. It's just that we have to be so careful to avoid offense. Right? This is what we keep coming back to, because in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the discussion between Maharaj Parikshit and Shukadev Goswami notes that we can always atone for things that we've done wrong. But Maharaj Parikshit says that atonement is not enough. Right? He compares it to an elephant bathing in water and becoming clean, and then coming out of the water and rolling around in dust again. Okay, so this is like us. We can always be praying for atonement and mercy. Sorry, we can always be performing atonement and praying for mercy for our offenses. But then if we keep committing them over and over again, it holds us back. Like Maharaj said, we've got to keep suffering for the results of those offenses and then moving forward. And then causing offenses and suffering for them, and then the progress is so much slower if we're always getting pulled 2 steps back for every step we take forward. So it's upon us to make sure that there's a change, that we can avoid the retarding effects of offenses to our spiritual life, and we can truly make it a forward march, right, by the mercy of the Lord and the devotees. Okay. So we can't blame Krishna for any lack of apparent progress, for the fact that they're not yet on the level of Sambandha. The help is all there. This much is very, very clear. Right? Krishna is there working overtime, we could say, to make sure that the progress is there. So we can't keep committing offenses and then only suffering those and not making any progress and then blaming the Lord. There is no such thing. Okay. We have to do our part. The Lord is obviously doing so much from His side, and that is, of course, the wonder of devotional service. Next, Lord Chaitanya explained to Prakashananda Saraswati how one can achieve the Supreme Personality of Godhead by devotional service. First, the Lord quoted a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam 10 to 11, chapter 14, text 21, in which Krishna says that he can be realized only through devotional service executed with faith and love. So we understand this is Abhideya. This is now beyond any material execution of devotional service. Right? This is faith and love. Indeed, it is devotional service alone which purifies the heart of the devotee and elevates him to the ultimate realization by which he serves the Lord with faith and love. That's the ultimate realization. Even if one is born in a low family, like a family of chandalas, dog eaters, one can become filled with transcendental symptoms through realization of the supreme stage of love of Godhead. These transcendental symptoms are mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 3, Text 31. When pure devotees discuss subjects dealing with the Supreme Lord, who can cleanse all kinds of sinful reactions from the heart of his devotee, they become overwhelmed with ecstasy and display different symptoms due to their devotional service. The Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 2, Text 40 also states, when pure devotees chant the Lord's holy name due to their spontaneous attachment to the Lord, they sometimes cry, sometimes laugh, sometimes dance, sometimes sing, and so on, not caring for any social convention. So someone from the outside may think, well, what's so important about these symptoms, crying, dancing, and laughing? It may seem ordinary. People tend to get more excited when they see displays of material mystic powers, levitating or manifesting things out of the air. Or they get impressed as well by someone who's reciting Vedic mantras very nicely, or performing a big yagya, or doing some worship procedures. And if those are being done for the Lord, then yes, they are of significance. But the importance is whether we are doing all these things with ecstasy. These ecstatic symptoms mean that this person is truly on a transcendental level, way above this, and not even, can you say way above this, so elevated that it can't even be imagined. Right? Everything else is material. If we're very academically adept in the scriptures, if we're able to intonate the Vedic mantras very nicely, if we're performing yagyas very nicely, if we're levitating, all of that, these are all material abilities. Unless there's some ecstasy involved there, someone has been transformed completely, right? These things are actually not they're not actually that impressive, right? They don't carry any real value. And we've also read this very important verse from Bhagavatam a little while ago that states that these ecstatic symptoms are the way we get into the spiritual world. Without these ecstatic symptoms, it means that we have not made progress to the transcendental level. We haven't made progress to being of the same quality of the spiritual world. So we actually can't get in there. We can't get free of the material world just yet. Right? The word spiritual gets thrown around a lot these days. People think that anything that is a little out of the ordinary is spiritual. And they'll call things like tarot card reading or even like astrological understandings. Certainly all these mystic powers and stuff, spiritual, but the definition of spirit is the opposite of matter. And these things are merely a more subtle material, a more subtle display of matter. Like that is it. They're not on the level of transcendence at all. But of course, our experience is quite limited. We only know that which we can see and feel right now. And so these kind of things seem very spiritual to people. The important thing, therefore, is to get guidance on what is spiritual from those who have seen it, who have experienced it, from our spiritual teachers, from scripture. We take their word for granted because they have actually experienced it. And then when we make advancement, then we will understand as well what is truly spiritual. There must be transformation. There must be practical demonstrations of knowledge, not practical displays of mystic powers and so on. Sri Prabhupada actually explains that modern science has kind of usurped a lot of these mystic powers. We can become lighter than air now in airplanes, right? We can go to other planets in space travel. Space travel is even becoming commercialized. We can get into stone through drilling. All these mystic powers don't actually mean much. What are you going to do with it practically anyway? Okay. And most importantly, of course, it's temporary. They, after so much effort to get them, they're finished at the time of death. So it's not worth the effort to do any of this. And even though we can use other things like Vedic mantras,
Hare Krishna, dear
there we
Mataji,
go.
Dandava Pranam. Thank you very much
Hare
for
Krishna.
wonderful class. Thank you very much also for explanation for Bhagavad Gita, 15th chapter. Very nice. Thank you very much, Dandava Pranam.
Thank you, Masi, for the service. I must apologize. Thank you. Sorry about the technical problem. I hope I'm clearly audible now. So the important thing now is that we focus on what matters then, developing our devotional service, our relationship with Krishna, that we don't aim for anything mystical, that we understand what is truly spiritual life. We make progress for that, right? This is a message from Srila Prabhupada, from all our acharyas, from Lord Caitanya, from Lord Nityananda. Okay, they have been expending so much of effort to tell us what we should be really doing with our very short lives in the age of Kali Yuga. Okay, all the scriptures are guiding us toward that as well. This is why it's so important for us to make the effort to understand the scriptures from those who understand them, who have realized them, who are living them, right, who are on that level of practical spiritual knowledge. Okay. So I think we will stop there for today. Sorry for the technical difficulty, and thank you, Kadrutamasti, for the kind words, and to all of you for motivating me through all of this. Your enthusiasm and your love for the Lord is very inspiring, and it means that we are trying more and more to help you in your spiritual path as well by preparing these classes and so on. And we hope that the Lord and Sri Prabhupada are pleased. So we will continue our discussions on this chapter next week. Are there any questions or any other comments? Anything else that can be clarified? If there's none, then we will sing Chora Ashtakam again today. Today we said it's the last day of this wonderful month of Purushottam. So these spiritual opportunities, like these holy months, are given to us because we said the Lord is so understanding of where we are and how we are struggling. So we need these. They're like little extra lifelines thrown into this ocean of nescience. And it's more of an opportunity to climb above the water and take a deep breath and make some progress. So this month of Purushottam is especially significant because it only comes around every 2 to 3 years. So we hope everybody has made the most of it spiritually, and that the Lord accepts all of your offerings and your efforts of love towards him, which he will, because he is just so loving. He's just the most loving, wonderful person who's always reciprocating with us, even if we don't realize it. So he's definitely pleased, I'm sure, with everything that you've done for him. So we're going to close off with Saurashtakam. I will just ask Paramahansa Prabhu to please put up the words because I'm struggling for some reason with this phone to do that. Hopefully I'll be back to my regular device next week and we won't have this problem.
Hare Krishna. Sorry, Atimalji accidentally left due to internet connection. Just please bear with us.
Really
Hare
sorry
Krishna.
about the connection today.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Welcome back, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
We can hear you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna. Welcome.
All right, let me try. Okay, cool. Let me try putting my video off and let's see if that helps. Okay, let's go. प्रजेकसीधं नवनीतचौरं गोपाञ्जनानं चतुर्कुलचौरम् अनेकजन्मार्जितपापचौरं जयगदन्यं पुरुषं नमामि श्रीराधिकाय हृदयस्य चौरं नवम्बुरशमलकान्तिचौरम् परशिकानं च समस्तचौरं चौरगदान्यं पुरुषं नमामि अचिन्तनीकृत्य पादाश्रितान्यं करोति भिक्षुं पतिगेहहीनम् केनाप्यहोभीष्टनचौरैर्भिः दृष्टाश्रुतो वा न जगत्त्रयेऽपि यादीयानामपि हरति यशेषं गिरिप्रसारान्नपि पापराशीम् आश्चर्यरूपाणनुचरैर्भिः दृष्टाश्रुतो वा न कदापि ध्यानं समानं च तातेन्द्रियाणि प्राणं शरीत्वा मम सर्वमेव पालयसे कुत्र चित्तोऽध्यचोर त्वं भक्तिदां नास्ति माया निरोधः हीनस्ति घोरं यमपाशबन्धं हीनस्ति भङ्गं भवपाशबन्धम् क्षीणति सर्वस्य समस्तबन्धं नैवात्मनो भक्तकृतं तु बन्धं मन्मानस्येतां नित्यराशि घोरे कालगृहे दुःखमाये निबध्नः प्रभस्वये चोरहारे चिराय स्वचूयघोषोचितं निवदन्तम् कारागृहे वस सदा हृदये मदीये मद्भक्तिपाशधृतबन्धननिश्चलात्सन् त्वां कृष्ण हे प्रलयकोटिशतान्तरेति सर्वस्वचौर हृदयान्न हि मोचयामि हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. So read the translation. I offer my respectful obeisances to that foremost of thieves, who is famous in Vraja as the butter thief, and he who steals the gopis' clothes, and who, for those who take shelter of him, steals the sins which have accrued over many lifetimes. I offer my respectful obeisances to the foremost of thieves, who steals Srimati Radhika's heart, who steals the dark luster of a fresh rain cloud, and who steals all the sins and sufferings of those who take shelter of his feet. He turns his surrendered devotees into paupers and wandering homeless beggars. Alas, such a fearsome thief has never been seen or heard of in all the three worlds. Mere utterance of his name purges one of a mountain of sins. Such an astonishingly wonderful thief I have never seen or heard of anyone. O thief, having stolen my wealth, my honor, my senses, my life, my everything, where can you run to? I have caught you to the rope of my devotion. You cut the terrible noose of Yamaraj. You sever the dreadful noose of material existence, and you slash everyone's material bondage, but you are unable to cut the knot fastened by your own loving devotees. O stealer of my everything, O thief, today I have imprisoned you in the miserable prison house of my heart, which is very fearful due to the terrible darkness of my ignorance. And there for a very long time you will remain, receiving appropriate punishment for your crimes of thievery. O Krishna, thief of my everything, the noose of my devotion remaining forever tight, You will continue to reside in the prison house of my heart because I will not release you for millions of aeons. Shri Shri Radha Radhanath ki jai, Krishna Sai Gaura Hari ki jai, Shri Chaurashtakam ki jai, Shri Bhavamangal Thakur ki jai, Shri Purushottam Nas ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bom. Okay. Again, thank you all so much for joining us. I'm not sure if my connection is going to allow me to have this video on for much longer, but thank you all so much for your kind attention, for your comments and questions, for your enthusiasm. Enjoy the rest of this evening in Purushottama and have a wonderful week. And please join us next week as we continue this chapter of Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna,
Thank you,
dear
Mataji.
Mataji,
Hare
Dada
Krishna.
Bobina.
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna, Hare
Maharaj.
Bol.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Hare Krishna, everyone.